When I climbed in alone, he didn't say anything about my missing companion, and he didn't wait before taking off into the streets either. Right, let's go report to Charisse. The air fresh and a scented lobby welcomed me back, almost shocking my senses. Some of the Ascari waiting around gave me looks as I walked by. They had to have noticed I was alone. And at this rate, we'll... As soon as I stepped inside the meeting room, Charisse abruptly cut off her words to the agent. They both stared at me for a few moments, obviously trying to figure out what happened. Valkii, I see that Kedrick isn't with you. Charisse went silent for a short time, her eyes much more troubled and grave than usual. Then she glanced at the agent beside her, gesturing towards the door. If you'd allow us a moment, please. Of course. After a short nod, the man turned on his heel, swiftly making an exit. The killer, I presume you found them then. When we were by ourselves, she addressed me with a low, worried murmur. He said his name was Lazarus. I had considered the possibility, but I believed he was no longer a threat to us. Her face slowly darkened, expression flickering between disgust and worry. There is only one way for a vampire to increase their physical power, through the consumption of another vampire's flesh. However, just as our blood is poisonous to each other, the flesh is too, with some incredibly rare exceptions. Only a few vampires have the immunity to stomach either. But for humans, consuming our bodies can gives them incredible, though only temporary, powers. This is how Lazarus grew so powerful. He had promised to change his ways after he became an agent. That was before you entered the scenario, however, and he disappeared. Why didn't you contact him after the mistake? I did contact him. There was a delay, yes, but the circumstances had changed. But that short time span was no excuse for him to start hunting again, not after we'd made an agreement. For a moment, her voice sounded a little uneven, even shaky, but when she spoke again, it had returned to a more cool, collected tone. Now that he's delivered his message, I don't know whether he'll keep killing. However, I will have my agents remain on high alert now that we know what we're facing. You have done admirable work, nonetheless. I won't forget your bravery and tenacity in escaping his clutches. From the brisk way she cleared her throat, it was obvious that she didn't want to discuss Lazarus any further. That is all, please leave me. About Kedrick. There is no need to explain further. I can already assume what happened. It is unfortunate, but he accepted the risks when he undertook this task willingly. Good night, Valkii. I didn't want to just say nothing. That seems pretty heartless, even if he was a dickhead. Leaving the meeting room behind, I returned to the lobby. Despite the length of my suit adventure, the sun hadn't begun to rise yet. I had enough time to visit somewhere, or else I could stay at the hotel. So... this is like night 4? Let me have a look at our stats. I need to go with the Mavar. My god, how do I have so much rep with the Golgotha? I do not need to go anywhere near the Golgotha. Let's go to the beach house. I had my driver take me to Santa Monica, deciding to stop by Randall's place. Oh, this is an easy one, actually. I pushed open the door, greeted by cheerful sounds of conversations and clinking glass. There was quite a crowd inside, though Randall wasn't anywhere to be seen. Chat with the Mavar. I wandered over to the nearest group of Mavar, trying to pick up bits of their conversation. Can we just leave already? Man, I'm so ready to get out and ride. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that Randall's not coming with us, though. Same here, but hey, he'll ride with us next time, I bet. From the way they were jostling keys and pulling on leather gloves, it seemed like they were heading out to ride their motorcycles. Hey, Valkii, you want to go with us? I think we got a spare bike that you can ride. Familiar Mavar called out to me, grinning brightly. Sure, let's go. Sweet, come on. We spent the next hour or so racing along the beach, riding together under the moonlight. The Mavar hollered and cheered the whole way, and something about it reminded me of a pack running in the wild. All I could hear were their voices, the sound of roaring engines, and the ocean steadily crashing around us. For some reason, in those moments, I felt less human and more animalistic than ever before. And by the time we finally returned to the house, the untamed, uncaged instinct still stirred deep in my chest. Let's see how much that got me. I'm not doing too badly. That got me quite a bit, actually, because it was below the Ascari before, so that's good. So leave. Now I need to try and... Sorry, it's so uncomfortable. I'm gonna go to the abattoir because apparently there's a Ascari there. I am still trying to be able to do everything in one go, but I don't know if I will be able to do it because I didn't start early enough or something. It was a packed night at the club. I saw and sensed plenty of Ascari around, mingling with the unaware humans. Over in the lounge, a friendly-looking group stood chatting and laughing with each other, and when we briefly made eye contact, one of them nodded at me invitingly. Wait, what do I need to do? Dance with them, okay. That's easy. I slowly made my way over to the Ascari, who welcomed me into their group almost instantly. Wild, free-spirited, and down-to-earth, they were much different from the more elegant vampires I usually saw at the hotel. But they weren't like the Mavar either. I glimpsed a dreamy, distant romance in their eyes, the same flower-child smiles I'd seen in old photographs. As we carried on a loud conversation over the music, I learned that they'd been partying since the LSD days of the 60s, which apparently saw an outbreak in vampirism. Back then, rumours spread that getting fed on was just an amazing new high, but all the young, over-eager vampires frequently drank too much from their partners. So instead of letting them die, they spread the condition like wildfire. After they'd shared some of their history with me, the friendly Ascari invited me to dance. I decided to dance with them. Why not? I followed them out onto the floor I followed them out onto the dance floor, where we spent the next hour slamming and flailing to various gothic hits. Their dancing skills were all over the place, but nobody really seemed to care. They were just happy to be enjoying themselves, relishing the music the same way they had decades ago. Eventually, the group dispersed to get drinks or wander off with their partners, but they thanked me for spending time with them. I'm not getting a drink at the bar. That's a long conversation. That's kind of unnecessary. Returning to the street, go spend time at the hotel. I would go see Marcus, but I don't necessarily think there's too much to talk about, and I can probably do it on the last day and get everything out the way, maybe. Like usual, the lobby was fairly empty, though not completely. I noticed an elegant woman standing near the desk, her attention flicking idly around the room. Our gazes met for a moment, and she flashed me a sweet, lingering smile before averting her eyes again. Let's go approach her. I approached the woman curiously. It almost seemed like she was waiting for someone. Oh, pretty! Oh, what do we have here? When I grew close, she gave a soft, theatrical gasp, blinking at me with inquisitive brown eyes. You're quite the striking young woman. I'd certainly remember if we met before. Delighted to make your acquaintance. My name is... I'm going to Google that. It's not what I wanted. Qing Ying. Did you hear it going slower? Qing Ying. And you might be? I'm Valkii. Maybe we'll end up as more than just acquaintances. That's a very forward thing to say, but lovely to hear. She let out a musical laugh, one that chimed in the air like a bell. Wait, was that what I was supposed to say? Oh, be polite and encouraging, suggests she back off and entice her paramour. Okay. You had good timing showing up when you did. I'm waiting to begin a meeting with one of Miss Locke's associates, but I forgot to bring along something to read and my mind keeps fluttering off places it shouldn't. She sighed, sounding faintly distressed, although I noticed an excited sparkle in her gaze. I'm from a coven in New York, not Los Angeles. I flew in a few hours ago, actually. But I just can't concentrate on business at all, not when the love of my life is in this city. Of course, I haven't completely won her over yet, which is a tiny problem. Oh, who is she? Hehe, who hasn't she been might be a better question. Her warm giggle faded away after a moment and she pursed her lips more thoughtfully. I used to be a lady in waiting some time ago. Quite a while ago, actually. Imperial China. Time flies, doesn't it? It just so happened that I served the most beautiful, exquisite, radiant princess to ever grace the Earth's surface. Of course, I fell impossibly in love with her. I was doomed from the start. Incredibly blessed woman that I am, she somehow fell in love with me too, and for a time we were just the happiest creatures alive. She sighed dreamily, eyelids briefly fluttering closed in a rapturous look. Things couldn't stay like that forever though. Happiness in the mortal world just never lasts. My princess, you see, she had to marry this wretched diplomat from the West, and I went along with her. The wedding was just awful to sit through. But then it just so happened that a few months later, her husband very tragically passed away. It was so sudden it caught us all by surprise, complete surprise. Yet there was a silver lining. His death allowed the princess and I to finally be together, so who am I to question fate? What happened then? Was one of you turned into a vampire? Well, the princess, she passed away a short time after that. We were both still human, and on her dying breath we made a pact to reunite in the next life, to fall in love again. Then, about a year later, I was turned by an Ascari vampire, which threw quite a wrench into our eternal rendezvous. Now I've found her a number of times since then, in very different bodies, but I always know it's her, and I fall in love with her each time, just like I did at the beginning. Despite her words, Qinying? Is that how you say it again? I've forgotten. Qinying's tone never lost a certain determined, cheerful energy. The only problem is, well, I've never gotten permission to turn her. She's still something of a stubborn soul, even after each rebirth, and every time I have to see her die as a human again. If only I could find a way to remake our connection from the past, to have her join me in the Empyrean bonds of undying love, even if it means abandoning the sun forever. Your dedication after all these years is incredible. Doesn't she appreciate that? Thank you for saying so. She does at times, but never enough to let me turn her. I think I just haven't impressed her enough yet, at least not in this incarnation. She pursed her lips slightly, then drew in a deep breath. I was longing to visit her tonight, to keep the torch of our love burning brightly. You've listened so wonderfully to me, dear. What do you think I should do? Suggest she back off and entice her paramour. What? Entice her. Be polite and encouraging, or suggest she back off and entice her paramour. Entice her, send her sweet reminders of your love, but keep a distance until she's ready. I think you might be onto something, really. It's so hard to be patient when she's right there, and I want to always stand by her side, but I have to remember she's still mortal. Thank you so much, Valkii. Of course, I hope things work out for you. Oh, they will. All it takes is persistence and a clear heart. I'll have to mention to Miss Locke how impressed I am with her new agent. I wasn't expecting to find such an open heart and mind here. But you've certainly proved otherwise, Valkii. She beamed at me fondly, touching one of her glittering earrings with a small chuckle. Ah, here comes the man I was supposed to be meeting with. I think I'll have to be off now. Thank you for your company, Valkii, and take care. She's so pretty. Wiggling her fingers at me gently, Qinying turned towards the approaching Ascari agent. I watched as they strode off towards the meeting rooms together, her bubbling stream of conversation slowly fading into the distance. Can I actually leave the lobby? Yeah, sunrise is, I was going to say. So I decided to head upstairs to my room. I want to check my stats, please. I'm obsessed. Hey, this isn't going too bad. I have one last chance for Ascari rep. I don't have any more chances for Mavar rep. Flipping off the lights, I gazed out the window into a sparkling panorama. It was so strange to think that if I hadn't been turned, this room would belong to Lazarus. Where would I have been right now? Still in Hollywood, chasing my dreams? Or if Hollywood rejected me, would I have ended up somewhere very different instead? With my cold cheek pressed to the pillow, I left another night of unsettling thoughts for the comforting arms of sleep. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. It had been a long, tiring night. Charisse gave me a long list of errands to run and messages to deliver to her allies, neutral parties, and even enemies. A few of the missions had gotten a little too dangerous, but I'd managed to escape unscathed. I still had a few hours until sunrise, so I was getting ready to leave the hotel again after my report. I was in sore need of some well-deserved relaxation or a comfortable chat. "Excuse me, Valkii." The lobby clerk called out to me as I passed by, offering an uncomfortable smile when I turned around. Why does he hate me? "Somebody left something for you just a few hours ago. I don't know who it was, but it just kind of appeared behind the front desk earlier, and it's got your name on it." A mystery admirer then. Yes, something like that. He let out an awkward laugh, bending down to pick up the package and hand it over to me. The box was completely transparent, which meant I could see the huge neon pink glittery dildo resting comfortably inside. Obviously it was from Markus. But knowing Markus, he wouldn't send me something like this without a reason. We hadn't spoken after the attack 2 nights ago, so I had a feeling this was meant to be a message. More than likely he wanted me to visit him, probably without alerting Charisse. After depositing the gift back in my room, I hurried back onto the street. Just to be safe, I caught a taxi several blocks away from the hotel. If Markus wanted to meet me in secret, then I couldn't risk being tailed. But where are we meeting? We don't even know where he is. He can't be back at his shop already. Okay, I guess he is. This time, no, I guess he must have gone back there to send me that gift. This time, no one was leaving blood and roses when I arrived. Instead, a red closed sign glowed dimly in the window, flickering on and off. But the door was unlocked, so I quickly slipped inside. Somehow, the shop seemed cold, less welcoming than it had before. A dark stain on the carpet served as a reminder of the attack, making the atmosphere strangely oppressive. Even the mannequin felt unnerving somehow, its painted eyes staring at me without emotion, without anything at all. "I see you received my message," a deep voice murmured from somewhere out of sight, more solemn than usual. Moments later, Markus emerged from the shelves, his glasses reflecting the light. I had a feeling you'd be able to grasp its meaning. "I get to keep it, right?" "Of course, I trust you'll make good use of it." Doubt. Markus let out a throaty chuckle, stepping away from the shelves to saunter towards me, but despite his playful response, I noticed that he looked subtly different from his usual self. His cheeks seemed more hollow, his eyes tired and sunken, and even his smile drooped lethargically. Markus stopped beside me, hesitating. I knew that whatever he was going to say, it probably wouldn't be good. "Something strange is happening, Valkii. Something has changed, is still changing within me." Gazing at the floor grimly, Markus closed his eyes, taking a slow, deep inhale. "I can feel it, no matter how slow and subtle it may be." "Are you in pain? Should I get help?" "No, it isn't pain, or at least not in any part of my physical self. And I'm afraid no aid you might procure would help me. After the night of my near death, I have been unable to feed." Oh no. His voice sank to a low, uncertain murmur. "I sink my fangs into flesh, the human faints, but I cannot draw any blood past my lips." The first time it occurred, I thought perhaps it was merely a strange fluke, a distortion of my reality. But when I tried again and again and again, as Markus repeated the word, his head slowly sank further down until it seemed like he could barely hold it up. Each time, the blood merely oozed from my fangs, refusing to do so much as enter my throat. Confused, terrified, I attempted to drink it from a cup. To my surprise, it seemed to work. I could swallow all of it, unlike before, so I had to wonder if my mind hadn't merely been deceiving me. Until, less than an hour later, my stomach could no longer contain its contents and I was forced to vomit all the blood I had taken in. Turning towards me, Markus met my gaze with a wan, uncertain smile, studying me for my reaction. "It started after that night. Did your attackers poison you somehow?" "I believe they did, but unknowingly. All the blood they took from me, that was but a catalyst for something they likely never intended." A shudder visibly racked his lanky body, sudden and uncontrollable. Then, after he took another deep breath, Markus refocused his pale gaze on my face. "Tonight, a chance may arise to uncover what has dragged me towards starvation. But I called for you, Valkii, not as mere support, but because our paths are inseparable, deeply intertwined." One of his hands reached out towards me, though his fingers never quite touched my body. "Wherever I go, I am bound to try and take you with me, for I believe you too are in need of my destination." We will help each other. Of course, I'll help you no matter what, Marcus, I promise. I wonder if that resolve will last beyond tonight. His quiet words sounded wistful, like he was trying to limit his hopes before they rose too high. But I bid you to grasp it tightly. Where we're going, you will have need of such strength. His last words trailed to a murmur, and I sensed he was addressing himself almost more than me. It's getting early. A heavy weight hung in the air, surreal and oddly dreamlike, but I knew this was reality. Or at least, I knew it was supposed to be reality. Okay. Come on, Valkii. Marcus swiveled on his heel, beckoning me to follow. No doubt your mind's as boggled as my own, but I will explain more as we go. Silently hurry along after him. Just go. After locking the shop behind us, Marcus set out briskly down the street, his steps unusually hurried. I almost had to jog to keep up with his long, determined strides, which didn't show any sign of slowing down. He seemed much more wary too, constantly glancing over his shoulder and down every alley we passed. I wonder if he'll let me do that. I actually have to wonder if he'll let me do that. Reach out and hold his hand. When I reached for Marcus's hand, his first instinct was to jerk away slightly, but after a moment he slipped his fingers, which felt even thinner than normal, into my own, taking my hand in his firm grasp. His gaze shifted to focus on me as we walked, unblinking and intense. This strange condition is related to my attack. Of that I am quite certain. As you stayed beside me in my bloodless daze, I spoke to you from the deepest darkness I had ever seen, and in that black abyss a hand reached out to grab me. The memory must have still been very vivid because I heard his teeth grinding in the pause that followed. It pulled me, trying its very hardest to drag me down into its crushing, all-consuming depths. With all the force of my will, I was barely able to escape, but not before it took something from me. What did it take from you? That is what I hope to uncover. I know that it must be related to our sustenance as vampires, our digestion of blood, the engine implanted within us. Do you think it was someone's power? Perhaps, but perhaps not. I feel as if I never left my own head. Okay. His footsteps suddenly began to slow, and within moments Marcus came to a complete stop. He turned to face me, but his eyes seemed cloudy, darkened with traces of fear. But that hand was not the only thing I saw. When I opened my eyes at last, desperate, letting my gaze fall with every hope upon your face, Marcus froze, staring at me strangely. You too were the abyss. Then you're afraid of me? Averting his eyes for a moment, Marcus fell silent. His own confusion seemed to bring him as much frustration as worry. I fear for myself, and for you too. I fear that something has taken a hold of us, but we cannot fight it until we know its true nature. Okay. He began to walk again, gradually resuming his swift pace. There is one way we might uncover our answers. Not through powers or blood or bodies, but by opening something within ourselves. As we turned down a side street, I finally realized what our destination had to be. I am taking you to the cemetery, a place I am not overly fond of. However, there is an event, shall we say, happening there tonight. It may well hold some of the keys to our locked doors. You think he'd help you? He doesn't seem like the type. There is a role Andre feels compelled to play, very similar to that of Charisse, although it may not be so apparent. He enjoys acting as a guiding father, even to those whose goals may not align cleanly with his own. Much like Charisse, Andre cares for the ends, not the means. As long as he is serving the vampiric kind, doing what he sees as best for us, then there are no uncrossable lines. What I'm attempting to say is, yes, Andre will help us. Marcus spoke with more than a little wariness, but I couldn't sense any hostility in his voice. I know he may seem like a rather unorthodox type of man to rely on, but we are vampires, Valkii. The value of unorthodox practices died with our bodies. Okay, I don't know what he's gonna do. We reached the graveyard before much longer, wandering cautiously inside. The tall lamps shined a corpse-coloured light over the smooth path, guiding us forward. Marcus seemed faintly uneasy, but his eyes were also filled with a certain fascination as they roamed across the graves. When we grew close to the mausoleum, I noticed several strange statues standing in the darkness. They were clustered closely together, a group of humanoid figures with different heights and builds. Then, one of the statues moved. Forgive me for not providing more specific details. Marcus cleared his throat, eyeing me from the side as we approached the group. We won't be alone tonight. I'm already getting some spooky ritual vibes. Nothing quite so mundane, I'm afraid. Shame. As we approached, I was able to make out the vampires' faces more easily. The figures were in a loosely formed circle, some sitting, others standing. Most of them were wearing troubled expressions, seemingly lost in thought. They didn't even act like they noticed our arrival. I didn't spot any dark robes or ominous masks either. All of the Golgotha looked as if they'd just arrived from the street. But the atmosphere felt much more foreboding than any ritual. Welcome, Marcus, Valkii. Hey, dude. Andre, who'd been standing a short distance from the circle, turned towards us. I was not expecting you to appear tonight, nor did I foresee the young Golgotha deciding to accompany you. Hello again. I think we need your help. Yes, it seems that way indeed. His soft, elegant voice melded with the quiet night, reminding me of a librarian among his readers. But before we begin. Does Valkii understand our affair tonight, Marcus? No, not yet. Glancing around at the silent Golgotha, Marcus rolled his shoulders casually. I decided against explaining anything to her. Surely the task is better suited for that tasteful, serpentine voice of yours. Yeah. I see. It was hard to tell whether Marcus's remark was complimentary or mocking, and judging from Andre's side glance, he wasn't sure either. Very well then, I will be brief. Turning to focus the whole of his attention on me, Andre paused for a brief moment. In a time before the city was divided, the Golgotha would often congregate here in search of self-reflection. We have a practice somewhere between mediation and telepathy, joining our vampiric energies through instinctive connections. You might think of it as a temporary pylon, constructed from all our powers, which we may then harness for our individual purposes. Unfortunately, after the nights became rife with discord, there is often too much dissonance and static for us to properly focus. Despite Andre's thin smile, I heard a hint of resentment in his voice. Tonight, however, appears to be somewhat different. We feel a calm silence, perhaps due to a lull in the fighting, that will allow us to draw out our consciousnesses. Vampires who are not Golgotha occasionally join us as well, but because you share our nature, you may witness something very insightful indeed. Alright, do I need to be prepared? No preparation is necessary beyond an open mind. Marcus is experienced in the practice, he ought to guide you. With a slight nod, Andre motioned towards Marcus. Well, there you have it. I suppose it's best we just dive in. A shame I forgot the Freudian scuba gear. What? He grunted softly, lowering himself into a spot just outside the circle. As I sat down beside him, I noticed Andre already walking away, his hands clasped serenely behind his back. I felt Marcus's hand resting gently on my head, his fingers beginning to stroke through my hair. Now, Valkii. Murmuring in my ear almost inaudibly, Marcus gave me a faintly reassuring smile. There's no need to close your eyes. Simply let every trace of normality slip away, every prejudice, conception, every restraint of logic. Focus on whatever appears as reality around you. Deeply gaze at whatever draws your attention. He gestured all around us with one hand before his own eyes seemed to grow unfocused. Okay. After a moment, I let my gaze wander towards the moon. If I can't look at Marcus, I'll look at the moon. Tilting my head up, I turned my gaze towards the dark sky. Thin, ghostly clouds drifted over the moon, its pale shape looming over the city. As I stared absently forward, my thoughts began to drift, idle and unordered. I watched them pass by, one by one, until a single question slowly came to a stop right in front of me. Is this all there is? Right here, in the graveyard. Only the things I can see, taste, touch, smell, hear, think? Is there something beyond this? Yeah, why not? Yes, of course there is. As soon as I thought of an answer, that question gradually faded away, and another one rose to the surface to take its place. Do I want there to be something beyond this? Sure, why not? Oh God. The graveyard vanished, leaving me in darkness. It was cold, freezing, and utterly empty. But something shifted around me, all over me, whatever I was. Right now, where I am and what I'm doing. Is this something serious and meaningful, or will I laugh and forget about it later? It has meaning, why not? But what sort of meaning? It's helping me understand myself. My reply drifted through my mind, which seemed to be enough for now. This is also probably going to be important in his special ending, these choices. Just then, something glimmered in the dark. Like a magnet, it began to pull me in, getting stronger the closer I moved towards it. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. I knew I was right next to it. Then, with a loud click, a blinding light flickered down on me. This looks like the, what is it? At the beginning. The title. Doesn't it? I feel like it looks like the title. Its hum reverberated softly, like I was in a giant space with distant walls and a towering ceiling. And the circle makes it look even more like it. As my eyes slowly adjusted, I realized I was in front of a mirror. Oh, okay. Oh, Marcus. I was staring at somebody. At myself, lit up under the spotlight like a star. It looked surreal. Then if this isn't real, does the real world matter to me right now? Yeah, of course, it's still there. Does that mean I'm happy there? Yeah, why not? I kept staring blankly at the mirror, but it was hard to form any concrete thoughts. Every time I tried to think about myself, the words slipped through my fingers like sand. Instead, questions kept rising out of my mind, flashing before my eyes. Is it lonely here? Am I lonely right now? Yes, I'm isolated, but can't I just leave? No, I'm stuck here. Do I understand who's really saying this? It's someone else. But whose thoughts could it be? Someone thinking about themselves. I don't know, I'm just saying bullshit. After that, the questions abruptly stopped. Was that wrong? Whatever. All my focus was drawn to the mirror, to the strange face reflecting back at me. I felt my lips slowly curling into a smile, as despairing and blissful as I'd ever been in my life. For a split second, I closed my eyes, blinking away the mirror. The next thing I knew, I was on the sidewalk outside the club. Traffic zoomed down the street and people strolled by on their way to important places. I'd been here before and I couldn't stay. I had to get somewhere else. With that strange thought invading my mind, I started to walk. No one seemed to notice me as I passed them. They casually brushed by or sidestepped me, continuing on their ways. Occasionally I'd get a stray glance, but almost everyone ignored me. A woman stepped out to block my path. She stared at me, unimpressed, almost pitying. You're not going to get anywhere like this. Acting strange and trying to sound smart, it's a sad act. No one will like it. As her lecturing words echoed in my mind, the woman shook her head. How do you know what people will like? It's obvious, isn't it? Just make them feel good. Tell them what they already know. Take something old and put a pretty bow on it and people will notice. They like nice, familiar, easy things, so they'll like you. Why are you still standing here anyway? A question sent a bolt through me. Almost instantly, I felt myself start walking again, faster this time. As I crossed out of the main street and into an alley, I heard footsteps behind me. It was the woman. She was following me. Ignoring her, I turned my attention forward instead. I could see a man standing at the end of the alley, staring at me like he'd been waiting for me to arrive. What are you trying to say? I don't understand. I don't really think you know what you're trying to say either. Again, words ricocheted in my head, but this time they belonged to him. Why don't you just say what you mean, or better yet, don't try to say anything at all. People will get the wrong idea, and you don't want that. I say what I feel, it's all true. That doesn't matter. What you feel is probably wrong. And even if it's right, people will think it's wrong. Someone has to be wrong. Just say and feel normal things. Don't be vague. People don't like vague. Why are you still standing here? My body jerked forward. I stepped past him, continuing towards the end of the alley, but I heard his footsteps closely following me. This is weird and kind of creepy. The side street was empty. Or at least, I thought it was empty at first. A girl stepped out of the shadows, her hips swaying as she sauntered towards me. You're so cute, you know. You'd be the perfect lover. Just say what I want you to say. Her voice sounded hot and syrupy, and I could smell an overpowering sweetness from her. One of her hands reached out to stroke down my chest, dipping between my legs. Oh my god. That's the only thing I really care about. Be pretty, seduce me, tantalize me. Even if you're horrible, at least you're mine. At least I know you want me. But that's not who I am. What does that matter? Don't you exist for me? Don't you want to love others? Don't you want to make them happy in love? Shouldn't you care about other people more than yourself? Why are we still standing here anyway? This is... What, is it like all the expectations of people? As she leaned forward, trying to close the space between us, I jerked back reflexively and made the mistake of looking over my shoulder. The man and woman were catching up to me. If I stayed here, then... Before I knew it, I'd broken into a sprint. Now 3 of them were behind me, hot on my heels. I flew down into the parking garage, passing more and more people as I ran. This isn't very original, is it? A scornful voice drawled at me. Running from things like us? You're such a cliché. Don't worry, we won't judge you too much. Another voice sighed at me with pity. You're still young and stupid after all. That doesn't mean we won't make fun of you, though. Behind your back, maybe to your face. You've got to hear us somehow. Each one started following me. Their racing footsteps echoed like thunder off the concrete walls, roaring louder and louder in my ears. I dashed out of the garage and into the sewers. There, another figure was waiting for me. What's the point of running? You'll never be great. You'll just suffer and die a nobody, just like everybody else. The voice sounded delighted, full of nothing but childish glee. And even if you were great, it wouldn't matter. You'll be forgotten soon enough. You're just trying to break me. Why would I need to do that? You're already broken. Oh fuck. Like it's speaking to my soul. You don't really have any faith in yourself. That's why you're hopeless. But it's alright. Nobody really believes in themselves, even if they pretend to. Why are you still here anyway? Pulling out a long gleaming knife, the figure eagerly stepped in towards me. I ran past them, deeper into the tunnel, into the sand, but I could still hear them after me, getting closer. Hey, hey, don't listen to them. Over the sound of crashing waves, a new voice boomed in my head. He towered on the sand, grinning at me encouragingly. You can be strong like me, confident. Just wear the crown, set an example, rule like you're supposed to. I mean, everybody's got a crown, but somebody's got to stand up and be king. The strongest power comes from showing people where they need to go. He's wrong. Yee! Another voice cut in, soft and weak, but bitter. The strongest power comes from choosing to suffer. History's proved it. You have to suffer with everyone else, sacrifice yourself for everyone else. You're only as good as what you offer humanity. Suffer to show how good you are. Suffer to prove you have any worth at all. The 2 of them blended together, trying to drown out the other. Even they started following me, trailing me like bloodhounds across the sand. I ran and ran and ran. The further I fled, the more faces I passed, the more footsteps chased me. All of their voices echoed in my head, each one trying to scream over the rest, but no matter how hard I ran, I couldn't escape it, that constant deafening roar. At last, I burst into the club. Hordes of people shoved and pushed me, but I clawed through them like a terrified animal. I had to get out of here, I had to escape. Oh, it's me. Do I exist in your world, or do you exist in mine? A last voice, one that sounded like my own. It rang out over all the others, piercing right into my brain. But still, I ran past. They were all on my heels. I couldn't stop. Past the bar, the lounge, into the hallway that had started all of this, the hallway that was a dead end. With nowhere else to go, I squeezed my eyes shut. I could hear their footsteps coming up behind me, slowing to stop behind my back. Then they were silent. This was it. I'd never be able to make it any further. Hollywood was the beginning and it would be the end. A cage made of cold, straight lines. I opened my eyes. Once more, the mirror hung in front of me. But there wasn't anything left to reflect. Well, that's sad. Like the sense of self is just gone. It's like other people. Oh, I know what I want to say, but getting the words out is really difficult. I've always been better at typing than talking. Like, one of the reasons why I do these videos is so I can get better at talking again. Because I feel like one of the weirdest symptoms for me of depression was making me feel stupid with my words. Like, I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't say it. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that. But it's like how kind of everyone you come across is almost reflecting a mirror back at you. Do you know what I mean? Like, they know what they want you to be. Like, most people will want you to be something, whether they admit it or not. They have, like, expectations of you. It's like once you take on all those expectations, who are you anymore? Are you yourself anymore? Or do you just not, like, your own sense of self just not exist anymore? I don't know if that's what they were trying to say with that, but that when it was like there was no reflection left, that like kind of got me, you know. I was staring at the graveyard again. Oh, I should go to the next video. I'll see you then.